Hey, what's up? My name is James Chili and welcome to my channel. This is the last Thursday before Halloween, so I thought I would do a Halloweenish type special. Get a little spooky for you. This week I want to talk about monster protagonists. Monsters that are the main characters, that are just leading the story, and they are the hero. We love monsters. When monster movies first became mainstream in the 30s and 40s, they exploded. They were everywhere. Everything in the horror genre was monsters. Werewolves, vampires, the Mummy, aliens, Frankenstein's monster, the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Blob. Did I say zombies? On and on. Everything in the 1950s was monsters when it came to the horror genre. But sometime around the 1960s, our love of monsters thrusted them into another genre. Is comedy a genre? I think that's where they landed. They ended up being sort of lampooned. I think we had seen so many monster movies for decades that this new generation of kids or whoever, because most of this stuff was named for kids, aliens who had straddled the horror and sci-fi genre drifted more and more into the sci-fi genre, where they ended up kind of staying, in my opinion. Occasionally we see aliens in the horror genre, but let's face it, they're a sci-fi creature now. The Addams Family came out in 1964, and although the characters weren't monsters, they were kind of a bunch of weirdos, but they did have like creatures in the cast of characters. I'm not sure what Cousin It was. I'm not sure what Thing was. Lurch may have been like a Frankenstein-type monster. I don't really know. But here's one of the examples where they took the kind of horror genre and moved it into comedy and turned these kind of wacky, what would normally be scary, into our protagonists, our heroes. Also in 1964, out came The Munsters. Now, The Munsters was a little bit more on the nose. I say a little bit, I mean right on the nose. They had analogs to all the classic horror monsters. Herman was Frankenstein's monster. Lily was Bride of Frankenstein. Grandpa was the vampire, specifically Dracula. Eddie was the Wolfman, or I guess Wolf Boy. And Marilyn was, I'm going to say Miss Clairol? I'm not really sure. The Monster Squad came out in 1976. I actually watched this show. The premise of this TV series was that the classic monsters were trying to atone for their misdeeds of their past, and they were using their powers to fight crime. Yes, it was a comedy. So this is kind of what we got for a while. Even Vincent Price and all those classic horror staple personalities got into the camp of monsters. I think they were all different types of silly shenanigan monster movies and stuff like that came out through the 60s and 70s. We still got scary movies with monsters in them. We still were getting werewolf movies and vampire movies, and those things were still getting out, but it was like the people were asking for more. They needed something more. It wasn't until the 90s that we really got a taste of that. And in my opinion, I think it started with a book that was written in 1976 by one Anne Rice. And that was Interview with the Vampire. It got a movie deal in the 90s, and it inspired Vampire the Masquerade, the role-playing game by White Wolf. And come on, if you don't think that that book inspired Vampire the Masquerade, you're smoking pancakes. Soon, the fiction genre was filled with horror-based protagonists. Or was it? Didn't necessarily have a lot of main characters as werewolves or vampires or any of the other monsters. I think the Anne Rice books were some of the exception going through the 90s, but oftentimes when werewolves and vampires and other monsters were depicted, they were kind of like the love interest or the best friend or the ally. They weren't center stage. We didn't get into their point of view and see the story through their eyes. It wasn't until the 2000s that we started seeing more vampire and werewolf main characters, even zombie main characters. We got Santa Clarita Diet, I, Zombie. There were others. I think there was a love story about a zombie that regressed back into being a human. It was funny, but it was also really gross. But what about the rest? I'm sitting here talking about vampires and werewolves, and that's about it, right? What about all the other creatures that we've seen that were popular in the 50s and 60s? Where did they go? Well, Monsters vs. Aliens was extremely fun, and it gave a nod to so many classic monsters. The Fly, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, The Blob, Mothra, the creature from the Black Lagoon. But again, this was more comedy than anything else. Have we seen other types of monsters besides vampires and werewolves, and I guess the occasional zombie, as the main character in fantasy fiction? Sparingly. We need more of this stuff, right? I know I do. For example, I would love to see a mummy main character. We've gotten The Mummy. The remake in 1999 was amazing. The first Mummy movie came out in 1930-something with Boris Karloff as Imhotep. The 1999 movie was, of course, a remake. And he was the villain. What if that premise was used to bring back the hero for some reason, or who knows what? I'd say bring back Queen Hatshepsut. Now that's a story. If you know anything about Queen Hatshepsut, she was a very powerful and successful queen, and she ruled and was loved by her kingdom. But when her jealous stepson took power after her death, he wiped out almost all traces of her existence, destroying writing and hieroglyphics and pictures and you name it. Luckily, we found her tomb and we found writing within the tomb. He missed some spots, and her legacy was maintained. But that guy was a dick. Maybe bring that dude back and then bring her back to fight him? I don't know. What about bringing back King Akhenaten III? That guy was pretty cool. Or how about Cleo goddamn Patra? This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. We're sitting on all these ideas. The Mummy? Come on, why not a good guy mummy? Get ScarJo on the phone. We need her to play Nefertiti. Seriously, I want more than vampires and werewolves. There are so many cool monsters out there. What about ghosts? Think of everything you could do with ghosts. Now, I don't know if you have the idea of a main character ghost who's translucent, can't be seen or heard, and doesn't have a physical body, but what if the ghost could kind of hop from person to person, possessing him? Now you've got this kind of adventure where they have to do whatever they need to do in the body of another person, and then they can't, maybe they're benevolent enough where they don't want to fuck up this person's life. So maybe this guy that they jump into has a wife and kids. They don't want to screw up this person's job. I mean, it's got a making for some comedy, but it also could be a pretty good adventure. And what about Frankenstein's monster? What is he anyway? Dungeons & Dragons describes his brand of monster as a flesh golem, something that's been sewn together, cobbled together into a golem that you resurrect and animate. We got another version of him in Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas. Love that movie, but have we seen this type of monster in other places? Have we seen them as a protagonist? I know Frankenstein's monster himself was kind of a protagonist in that he was misunderstood, but he wasn't exactly the hero. He wasn't exactly the one to kind of save the day necessarily. Same with Sally. Sally was definitely a protagonist, but it was really Jack's story. Have we seen a flesh golem center stage? I don't know. And I don't know how that would work in an urban fantasy setting if that was the genre you were going for. Modern day, some dude or gal all sewn up. I don't know what that would do. But you know what I would really, really love to see in the fantasy genre? The monsters that I would love to see more than anything. They're not even the classic monsters of the United States of the 50s and 60s. I want to see Asian monsters. Let's get more Asian monsters into contemporary fiction, into mainstream fiction, at least in the United States. Now, don't get me wrong. That stuff's out there. You can go find it. In Thailand, there's lots of movies about snake ghosts, or the Pumi, as they're called. And these are either depicted as giant snakes that can shapeshift into a woman, or vice versa, a woman that can shapeshift into a giant snake, or it's a woman with snake hair, or a woman has the top part of a woman, bottom part of a snake. It's always a woman. Let me just put it that way. In Korea, I'm very fond of the Kumiho monster, which is the Korean analog to the kitsune. If you're not familiar with that, it's a fox spirit. This is a 9-tailed fox that can turn into, you guessed it, a hot girl, and eats livers, kills people, comes out with vengeance. I'm not sure. They're depicted in many different ways. In Korea, the Kumiho is typically considered a dangerous monster, but they've been depicted in many, many different ways. There's one K-drama, comedy/drama called My Girlfriend is a Kumiho, about a guy that's dating such a monster, and she's a monster. And the other one that comes to mind is The Fox's Child, which is a 16-episode K-drama that still gets me in the feels every time I think about it. And have I even mentioned Japan? Do I even need to say that there is a shit ton of manga and movies and TV and you name it about monsters, demons, ghosts, ogres, goblins, all sorts of stuff from Japan. So believe me, that stuff is out there if you want to go and consume it from the source. But I would love to see this become mainstream in the United States. Go into a Barnes & Noble or browse through Amazon and just see more of this stuff at my fingertips. As it is right now, I kind of hope to find these things on YouTube before YouTube takes them down, or I have to go into a special K-drama website to find them. And this isn't common knowledge for everyone. It's not exactly mainstream. And I would love to see these types of monsters come over here. Let's bring in the Pumi into American fiction. Let's bring in the Kumiho or the Kitsune. Let's bring in the Bakeneko, which is a demon cat from Japan. Scratch your face off, and also happens to, you guessed it, turn into a hot girl. There's a theme here, and I can't quite put my finger on it. So that about wraps it up. Writers, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, I hope you're inspired, and I hope you're working on something that has a monster as a protagonist. If you are, let me know in the comments, or if you know of something, a work that's either in progress or that's been published, and you recommend it, you think I might like it, put it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. I love the idea of a monster main character. I think it's just great. It kind of turns everything on its head. Why are we hunting these cool creatures? We should be rooting for them. Let's see them do the right thing. Let's put them in places where they become the hero. I love stories like that. If you like this video, please give it a like. And as always, please subscribe. I post every Thursday. And you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can read the first chapter of my novel in progress, which happens to be about a half succubus. So hey, I'm doing my part about the monster main characters. Demons, I think, count, or devils, right? I mean, I'm not just going to talk about it and not do it. Come on. But yes, you can read the first chapter of A Flower in Hell on my website at jmchaley.com. As always, thanks for watching.